Well, hello, and let's talk about Chapter 8, Part 2, as we begin our first activities of executing Project Management Level 2. We pick up where we left off in Chapter 8 from 474. We are going to continue that same reading. So in week 10 of 474, we started Chapter 8. This week we're going to finish Chapter 8, and then the corresponding chapter in the PMI PMBOK is Chapter 9 on Project Human Resource Management. So our reading, and again, these diagrams should be very familiar to you now. These come straight from the PMBOK. And as we know, with all knowledge areas, and human resource management is a knowledge area of the PMBOK, with all of our knowledge areas, we have processes. The processes that are part of the human resource management include developing the HR plan. We always want to plan how we're going to manage human resources, or how we're going to manage anything for that matter. We need to acquire our project team. We need to develop our project team, and then we need to manage our project team. So let's talk about resource over allocation, because I'm sure many of you have seen that in your work breakdown structures. You've seen that little red symbol that looks like a man, a human symbol, and it's all the way over on the left edge of the activities in your WBS, and that typically indicates that you have an activity that has over allocated resources. So what that basically means is that you have a resource assigned to that activity that is expected to do two different things, or even three or four different things at one time. Now remember that a resource can refer to a person, it can refer to equipment, it can refer to a room, it can refer to a bunch of different things. Resources are a variety of different things. We tend to think of them as human, but we can also have other kinds of resources that can be over allocated. You may need a piece of equipment in two different places at the same time. Well, we already know that can't be. You cannot have a digger digging in two different spots on a project at the same time. So you cannot have any resource doing two things at the same time. So we need to resolve these over allocated resources. And there are a number of ways that we can go about doing this. Some of them include things like, well, we can assign more workers or different workers. We can assign someone else to the task to do it. We can split activities. Maybe we need to reorder activities so that they are done in a different sequence, and then the resources available. Of course, that all depends. Can we do the activity in a different sequence? We could borrow or acquire more resources from other sources. We could modify the scope of the activity. And sometimes that helps us level resources. So one of the ways that we go about resolving over allocated resources is a term that's called resource leveling. And this term describes all of the various types of activities that you could use to resolve any overloads or over allocations. It can involve adjusting the activity start and finish dates so that we can accommodate resource availability. Now, there are a couple of different ways. First of all, Microsoft Project in and of itself has the ability to automatically resolve over allocated resources. It's a button you press, and what it'll do is it will move activities around and change start and finish times to accommodate availability of resources. It's great. It's absolutely a great tool. However, may not work the way you expect it. In cases where the schedule is critical and things need to be done at very specific times, you press that automatic button and all of a sudden things aren't getting done when you need them to be done. So it's an option. It's a great option. And I encourage you to try it. So I would take my work breakdown structure. I would play with the automatic allocating of resources. And then I would save with a different name, version 2, version whatever, I don't care. But I would make sure that I kept the original version intact and then the automated resource allocation. So back up, make sure you have your original, make sure you have your new, and then you can compare and you can look and you can see, did it work the way you expected it to do? And then if not, then maybe there are just a few adjustments that you need to make. And you let Microsoft Project do most of the work, and then you can make a few tweaks and adjustments. But always, always, always keep a copy of your original so that you can go back to it if you need to. I encourage you to watch some videos that I've posted on resource leveling in the Module 1 Introduction, Reading, and Resources. They do a great job of explaining and demonstrating how to use Microsoft Project to level these resources. However, software is only one method. Using software is really only one method. And as I mentioned, it may not be the best way because things may not be happening when they need to happen. So keep in mind, software is a great tool, it's not the only tool and may not be the best option. Okay, so sometimes there are other ways of going about it, and one of the things that we might need to do is compress the project schedule. So there may be times when we need to change the project schedule because the project schedule exceeds the expectations from the customer or sponsor. Some of the ways that we can compress the schedule are to, well, reduce the scope of work. Sometimes there's just too much work that needs to be done. And if somebody comes along and says, I need you to finish this project a month earlier, okay, what do you want me not to do in order to make that happen? Sometimes we just have to reduce the scope of work in order to do that. Maybe overlapping or doing activities in parallel rather than sequential might be one way to get around that. One way we might be able to compress the schedule, meaning that we don't necessarily have to, we finish task A and then we start task B, and then we finish task B and we start task C. Well, maybe we can do task A, B, and C all at the same time with different people, and we can compress the schedule that way. Maybe we partially overlap some of these activities with leads and lags. Maybe we do an early start. Maybe we increase the number of hours that are worked in a work week. Maybe we have authority to authorize overtime, right? So if somebody wants to work 50 hours a week, boom, we give them an opportunity to work overtime. What does that automatically do to our project? It increases the costs. Again, triple constraint. Don't forget triple constraint. So when we mess with the schedule, we mess with the cost. When we change the scope of work, we change the schedule, we change the cost, right? So something to, all back to that triple constraint. We might be able to assign more resources. Maybe we are able to get a couple more people from a different department to come in, and then we may be able to speed up activities which are crashing and fast tracking, which is kind of what we're talking about here. Crashing is shortening the schedule duration by adding more resources. Fast tracking is shortening the schedule by performing some activities in parallel. So there's terminology associated with these things. One of them is called crashing the schedule. The other is called fast tracking the schedule. Definitely pay attention to page 235 and 236 of the text, which deals with over-allocated resources in Microsoft Project. It'll give you some great ways to think about over-allocated resources. Don't hesitate to ask if you have any questions on this. This is the lecture for this particular week, week 1. This can be a tough week, because you're going to be staring at this thing going, how am I gonna fix some of these things? So remember, you may be doing different things for different activities. You're going to be creative. Play with the automated software modifying or resolving over allocated resources in Microsoft Project. Play with that. But always save your backup and just be creative with some of the things that you do. So let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you have a great week.